Hello, everyone. This is Brian Kelly from Association Mavens, where you get direct access to some of the foremost thinkers and teachers in the association industry. My guest today is Holly Duckworth. Holly is the president of Leadership Solutions International and has more than 10 years of experience as an association management professional. She helps associations build consensus and influence volunteer leaders, plus assists with making better connections to volunteer membership. So welcome to Association Mavens, Holly.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be with you.
Okay, so I was very, very interested in talking with you about this topic that, as a newcomer to associations, know very little about, and that's components. So, over the last several months that I've been learning as much as I can about associations, that's one of the terms that's popped up that I've scratched my head on. So, I'm very interested in hearing what you have to say based on a chapter that you recently wrote for a new book that's out called Component Relationships Handbook that ASAE has published. So, the first thing I wanted to start off with was having you talk about generally, what's the current state of component relationships in most associations today?
Well, Brian, great question. I'm actually going to kind of go back to go forward, just to help you and perhaps your audience with that first word you just talked about, a little bit about the word components. Your question, Holly, what is a component, or kind of unfamiliarity with that word, is a very common thing that I experience as an association professional. Because if you actually Google or Google Images components, you'll get a copy of a picture, maybe those little cords that you plug in from your VCR to your computer, or your VCR to DVD player. Like when we think of components, we think of electronic components. And in the association world, the word component was adopted 4 or 5 years ago to define the overall word for chapters or special interest groups, member communities. It's kind of the all-encompassing word we mean to describe subgroups of a larger association. Some of those are based on geography, some of them are based on special interest, and now more and more, of course, with technology. So the Component Relations Handbook that the Component Relations Section Council of ASAE revised talks a lot about the various types of groups and what it takes to make a subgroup of a parent or national or international organization successful. So with your question, what is the state of component relations industry today? I think associations and their components are mirrors of one another. So everything that you might hear about or talk about on a national level is the same challenges, same opportunities that components are facing. Trying to really understand what their role is, how to engage members, how to use this thing called technology. Is face-to-face still a relevant tool? Those are all things that the chapters or the components are facing. But the most unique thing that I think is happening in the association world right now, which makes it a pivotal and exciting time to be in this components area, is this idea of the bridge. And what is the future of that possibility? Some organizations, their components are completely separate entities. They have their own 501c3 status, they have their own bank accounts, they have their own vision, their own mission. And in others, they're very much tied to their parent or home office. They have the same brand, they operate under the same financial structure, they have a lot of stringent reporting. I think that the future of associations is really having the courage to start having the conversations about where can that pendulum swing? Do we need to be all independent? Do we need to be all under the parent? What is that 50-50, that happy medium? And having co-created dialogue around making your components or your chapters the best mirror of your national or international home organizations' vision and mission is a great place about where components are today.
So let me ask you this: with the current state and kind of where things have been at, is it is it a negative thing? Is it something that it needs to change? Can you talk a little bit about where we're going from where we're at today?
Well, for people who know me, or as you get to know me more in the association world, I'm kind of the glass half full girl. I am the optimist forever and always about the state of the association industry. And yes, we have been through some challenges, but you'll always hear me do what I can to erase that word challenge and call it an opportunity. So I personally think that components and associations are poised to really take advantage of these opportunities. Now, for some groups, that might mean mergers and consolidations. For other groups, that might mean opening more components and more chapters, and certainly associations, for those who are international, are looking at massive global expansion. For some, that's looking at state or regional expansion. It's a positive time to be a part of it. One of the programs I'm releasing right now, it's called Control-Alt-Delete. You might be familiar with that keystroke on your computer, how to reboot your association for success. And I think in order to maintain this optimism and looking toward the future of components and associations, we need to look at what are we trying to control? How can we release that control? How can we look at alternate solutions and new things that we can offer our members as well as our staff and our volunteer leaders? And then delete. This time of change is going to require us to delete some antique programs. And that might be where some of the negativity comes in. But I think really working with that idea of deleting in a co-creative environment with your association executives and volunteers can help you to remain positive about the future.
Well, I like the positive approach to it, so thank you for that. Okay, so let's shift the discussion a little bit and talk about who are some of the organizations out there right now that are in the process of redesigning their component relationships. Do you have any examples that you can provide us?
Well, Brian, it's, anytime we do change in associations, there's always that tipping point of association executives. On the staff side, we need time to perhaps research and think about how the strategies could work, often before introducing the concept of volunteers, because again, that change can be sometimes a little tricky. So it's often the case where associations, they don't want to lead off with, we're ABC Association and we're going to change, because that can cause a little bit of sometimes bubbling up in the components. Sometimes it comes from the components that they want to change. So I'm always very careful to say ABC Association is actively engaged in the process unless I know that they're really working through it. And one of the groups that I have worked with a lot over my career is Meeting Professionals International. And I think that they're a great example of moving through some of these association changes. They went from really a collaboration model to more of a compliance model, where over the last really 2.5 or 3 years, they moved from chapters being fairly independent with their own finances and that, to starting to utilize a chapter business manager. They have a liaison that's committed between the home organization and the chapters to help them start to drive business planning, financial planning, and budgeting. So that's one example. I know Food Technologists is also working through this. I'm working with the Association for Outdoor Recreation. They're doing some changes and starting to look at this as well. There's a lot of groups that are in the preliminary stages of asking the question, are components relevant? What could they be? What could they look like in the future? So in the chapter of the book I write, chapter 13, The Future of Components, I talk a little bit about the organizations that are undergoing this change. But we have to keep in mind with associations that just because they're doing it, it doesn't mean that you have to, and it doesn't mean the changes that they make will be the changes that you need to make. So
that's a good point.
Yeah.
So yeah, what works for one association may not necessarily work for another. Everybody's unique and has certain circumstances that they're in that may be different, so that all things have to be considered.
Yeah, and especially with this being such a sensitive membership issue, I think we have to be careful that it's not just because they're not coming out and saying I'm the ABC Association and I'm going to change my components, that's a bad thing. Often, that's not transparent, they're trying to hide something. It's not often that they're trying to hide something. It's just simply we don't have the data to make a decision, and until we can make the best presentation to you, the volunteer, or you, the members, about change, we can't even start that dialogue. because it's our job as consultants and as association staff professionals to come to the volunteers with the best information that we have.
Yeah. So in your role as a consultant with associations, could you maybe share a little bit about how you've been involved with working with them through some of these changes and redesigning, their component relationships?
Well, my role, again, is different with each person. I have kind of three branches of my company. The first is professional speaking on the issue. The second is really the facilitation process, and then the third is private coaching for executives and volunteer leaders. So, kind of depending on the road any association might start to embark on, I'll generally sit down, have a consulting appointment with them about, where are they now with their components? And that often can be quite a long dialogue, getting to the truth of who we are as an organization. What is it that we believe? What is it we're asking our members to do? And what are we willing to receive and change as the value of the ROI of your association? That's where all of my work really starts. Then from that, I might offer a speaking engagement to come do some of that education. I have a program called One Team, One Dream, is there one plan for success, that talks about how you can align your components or your special interest groups or your SIGs vision and mission with your own home or parent vision and mission. So that can be a first step, a speaking or training opportunity, just to get the idea on the table. The second way that I might help is as they're starting to decide they want to make the change, whatever those might be, would be a facilitation and coming in and facilitating those conversations. Here are the questions that you need to be asking, and kind of as that neutral third party, pulling the best ideas out of the staff, pulling the best ideas out of the volunteers, and starting to find that place of synergy so that you can move forward. And then the third area is really the private coaching, and that's the area that I'm finding most exciting. We are at a really exciting time for, quite frankly, harvesting some of the great history of some of our association executives that have been in an ABC association 21 years. I'm talking to people who've been in associations 30 years with the same association, and they're starting to look at their life career transitioning out of that association. So I'm doing a lot of coaching with senior executives, starting to look at transitioning and building succession plans for staff. I'm also working with those younger executives that are looking at their first association executive job. Maybe they're, a marketing manager or, kind of a mid-level manager in association and are starting to move up into those CEO level positions. So that's kind of an exciting place where I can help associations think about the future of components, where they're at, whether they need speaking, they need coaching, they need facilitation, from full groups to down to the individual.
Okay. Well, in your chapter 13 in the book, you talk about really maximizing resources is one of the needs, or one of the reasons rather, why associations are looking to make a change with their component model. Can you expound upon that a little bit? And maybe are there any other reasons why they'd be fundamentally changing, how they're approaching this?
Well, you alluded earlier to the, Holly's the eternal optimist, but sometimes the glass is half empty. And I mean, it's reality, Brian. You work with groups every single day. Some of them, there's never going to be enough money, even though we have, X dollars in a bank account. There's never going to be enough volunteers, although we had 5 people ask to help and we gave them nothing to do last week. That we have to operate kind of starting to, again, get to the truth of what is your association, where are you, and where are you going? So I really try to work with groups to understand, okay, your resources are limited. You're not going to have enough people. You're not going to have enough. But how can we be more efficient and effective with those volunteer resources? That's going to be recruiting the right people to get in the right seats, doing the right jobs. That's going to be giving them that thing to do, holding them accountable, appreciating who they are and what they do for your particular association. That making that shift from that limited mindset to, the sky's the limit, and, we're building a target. Here's our vision and our mission statement, but we're going to do the little baby steps. And so that no volunteer feels overworked, no staff person feels overworked, but that if we get 1% better each and every day, we've really made a big difference in what our association can do and move us closer to the realization of that mission.
Good. So for associations out there that are looking to start and make a shift in this area, where can they begin? What are some of the questions that they should be asking, to move this process along? And I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, that it's not something that can just happen overnight, that it is very much a process that does take time and needs to be thought through. So, where as an association executive would you recommend me start in asking the right types of questions about, where we can go with the future of our component relationships?
Future of component relationships, I think, is less management and more leadership. And by that, I mean, perhaps in the old association model, you could tell your members what you wanted. You could kind of tell your board what you wanted, tell them the direction you were going, and they would do it. I think the future of association leadership is the co-creative process. And it's sitting down and having a dialogue about what works. That would be, what's working about our association, what's not working in our association, and what do we need to change. And being in a place of no idea is a bad idea. It goes beyond brainstorming. It goes beyond really visualizing the future, but really visioning the future for your association. And by that, I mean, not just, putting pictures on a vision board about, we're going to have 10% new member growth. We're going to have 5 new member programs. We're going to have, 3 new social media platforms, but really sort of sitting back as a board and as a staff and as an organization and saying, what is it within us that calls us to that purpose? Because the doing model of associations where we just keep adding layers and layers and layers isn't working, and we're all getting tired doing that. But I think associations of the future need to slow down and do a little bit of a visioning process. And what is it that they're able to become in the future, and what does that mean they have to let go of? And for some of us, I think technology is that one piece that we think is going to save us, and that's partly true. But I don't think we all have to be on every platform doing every tool all of the time. That starting to be really, really strategic about our value. So if I was an association looking to start this process, I would get to your truth of who you are now. I'd look at asking the questions and listening first. Listen to your members. Who are they? What do they want? What's working already? Don't change that. What's not working? And then how can you start to make the change? And be honest about the fact that these changes are not going to happen overnight.
So are there any pitfalls, as part of this process that we should be thinking about? Or do you think it's something that if taking the right course of action where we're thinking through, we're asking these questions and slowly going about creating an opportunity for discussion, that's really, the place to be? Or is there anything that inherently we need to watch out for in this process?
I think the number one pitfall is coming in and telling them it's going to be change. As a staff, as a volunteer, as an executive director, people, we live in change. We know it happens. It happens every day. It's clearly the nature of life right now, from politics to religion to associations to your child's school. But none of us like it when we're told it's going to change, and this is the way it's going to change. So if there was one fundamental thing I would say to associations looking at this is start the messaging around the co-creative process. Start it around the questions. And, I've given you a few examples today, but just be really honest that it's not if you build it, they will come. It's the knowing if you build it with them, they are already there. And the associations that are most successful about making this transition are doing it in conjunction with their components and their special interest groups and their SIGs or whatever term they're using, rather than coming down and saying this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important point, and something that I took away from your chapter in the book where you talk about changing the language that's being used from this is mandatory to, this is something that we highly recommend, and really, again, creating an environment of discussion, of coming to the table and being able to provide a vision for what the future is, but getting input and feedback from those that are involved. Seems like it would really, make a huge difference in improving things or taking them to a new level. So,
Yeah, Brian, a big key to this too is keeping it simple. That there's a lot of different ways you can change your organization, and clearly a lot of different types of organizations. But I think calling it down to being simple. And for me, with most of my clients, that right now is starting with something as simple as looking at your vision and mission statement. And I was working with a client the other day and I said, would you be willing to share with me your strategic business plan? He goes, yeah, we wrote that in 2009. Where did I put that document? Maybe you've heard that from your clients, that I can tell you that the health and the success of an organization now and where they're going in the future by the amount of minutes it takes for them to get that document. And I'm not saying that that document is the be all end all, but on some level, it says in there why people join, what the value is, what you're giving to them. And I think pulling those documents out and simplifying them. I mean, I had one group, I think their vision statement was like 55 words. And I use often, you may have heard of it, the 6-word memoir project. Can we cull your vision and mission down into 6 words? Because if I can get it there, I can move it out of your staff and your member's head and into their heart. And then they're so inspired and connected to making it a reality that some of those bigger changes suddenly become a lot more simple because it's tied around that 6-word realization of getting this project done.
Okay, so what we're really talking about here is like, what do the components of the future look like? And you made reference to how, especially with this upcoming younger generation, that we've all kind of grown up with McDonald's, Starbucks, Walmart, Target, all these big corporations that are using the franchise model. Obviously McDonald's and is a great example of that. So can you talk a little bit about how we can look at the franchise model as something that may inform what the future of components would look like?
Oh no, Brian, you didn't use the franchise word, did you?
I did.
Oh, I don't want to hear that word. I'm a volunteer. I'm out here. My community is unique and my chapter is dear to my heart. And I would never want to be like the Walmart of associations. You didn't just say that. Don't tell me that.
Well, what can we learn? What are the good things that we can pull out from that would inform, how we could keep consistency of the brand and the messaging while still letting components function independently, so to speak, or taking control of what their area of responsibility is.
I was just reading an article. We have Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and I read this great article. It was called Generation C. That let's throw out all those other letter soup and recognize that we're all connected. And we all have a desire to connect authentically at a higher level than we've ever had before. And I think associations of the future need to start looking at themselves as one organization, and that those organizations that can get to the place where it's not home office, it's not headquarters, it's not the glass ceiling that the local components can't touch, but we really start to integrate them as one living, breathing organism that's committed to one thing, the better off we're going to be. And that gives you that why, that core vision statement, but then gives you some flexibility on the outside to say, I'll just, the Chicago chapter. The Chicago chapter is going to have 8 monthly meetings because that's what works for them. But, maybe the New Mexico chapter of the association is only going to have 3 because that's a better fit for them. So it gives you a general manifesto rather than a hardcore policy that locks you down into something super stringent. And the organizations that kind of can create that flow with that common theme will help. And that common theme is obviously going to be, graphics and logos and vision statement and all that. But bringing all that to the forefront and remembering that it's not us and them, but we're all one, I think is going to be where those associations of the future are really going to strive.
Well, you use terminology in, I think, towards the end of the chapter where you talk about this process of transformation and looking at it as honoring the past while celebrating new successes. And again, I think that's a great way to look at it with a positive mindset, a positive view towards change, where it's not necessarily saying, you know what we've done is complete garbage, it's no good, we need to come up with something completely new. No, it's not about that at all. What it is being able to come together and say, this is what we've been able to accomplish, and these are great things, and now these are some of the new areas that we can grow into, and we can create better alignment. So is there anything that you would kind of say in closing on that topic, and this idea of a slow transformation, a process towards maybe elevating where we're at or going to the next level with this particular area?
So Brian, I found a quote, and I think it's by Oprah, and she says, "When we know better, we do better." And as associations, we have to realize that those solutions that worked in 1982 were the best of the best that we had. We created member value, we created member engagement, we made great money, we worked to attain the vision and mission. But now in 2012, we know better, we know different, we're utilizing different tools. So we have the opportunity and in many cases the responsibility to do better with those tools. And so honor those, I call them antique projects of the past. Some of them you will grandfather in and you'll carry with you. Others you might put on the shelf, like an honored thing of the past. But then that gives you the room to create a new program for the future. And so that know better, when we know better, we do better, I just think is such a great thing for associations to think about.
Great. Well, I've truly enjoyed the conversation, Holly, so thank you so much for doing the interview. Thanks everybody for watching. Be sure to sign up today in the upper right-hand corner of this website to be updated via email when new interviews are posted. Also, be sure to follow @BrianKellyNow on Twitter to stay on top of all things Association Mavens related. Lastly, please submit your recommendation for which Association Maven you'd like to see interviewed next. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to bringing you yet another great interview. Bye-bye.